Good morning and welcome back to the Turtle Wins the Race Home-Based Business Podcast. My name is Kara Buntin. I don't know if this microphone is working, so, if the audio is a little off, I apologize, but oh well. I've owned a home-based business since 1999, and that's what we talk about here. So, today I want to talk about something that's probably going to piss people off. Oh well, because, this is something that has been debated for centuries, if not millennia. And it's something that Josh Silverman, who's the CEO of Etsy, said when he first took over the job, is that there is not a market for handmade, meaning people don't buy handmade because it's handmade. And the first time he said that, I was offended. I was like, how dare you? But he's right. Okay, he's right. And if you stop and think about it, it really is kind of an issue of semantics. But he's thinking about it from a marketing perspective. And he's right. Okay? I would think about it from the user intent perspective. Like, what do people think of when they think of handmade? Why do they get up in the morning and want to buy something? And that's the example. He uses this example all the time, and he has for years. That people don't wake up in the morning saying, I want to buy something handmade. What they wake up and say is, I need to get a present that is unique. I need to get something that's special for this event. I want to get something that's better than the present that my cousin's going to get because she showed me up last time and I'm not going to get showed up again. But handmade isn't the selling point, okay? Now, I see what he means. I see what he means. And I think that people don't understand because we make things. We make things by hand. We value that. We understand the work that goes into it. We understand the time that it takes, the skill that it takes. So we have an understanding of all of the components that go into this. The vast majority of people don't. And they don't care. Okay, and this makes me cringe a little bit inside every time I see every holiday season people start circulating that little meme that says when you buy from a big box store, you're putting money in the pocket of the CEO. When you buy from a small home-based business, you're sending someone's child to ice skating lessons. There are a lot of people that work at the big box stores who send their kids to ice skating lessons with the wages that they earn from working at the big box stores. So that argument kind of falls flat. But that just, it shows to me the disconnect that we as the creators have with what people who don't make things actually think. And I think that what the most dangerous part of this is the marketing of it. Because I see people who are, they're going back and forth on their pricing. I think there's so many things that we do to sabotage our own businesses. And assuming that people value handmade because it's handmade is a huge part of that. What you need to understand, if you are someone who makes the products that you sell, people don't value handmade because it's handmade. They value something that's handmade if it's unique, if the quality is good, if there's something in it that speaks to them, and then they can say, oh, it's made by an artist. And some people like things because it's handmade, but that's not because it's handmade. Does this make any sense? It makes complete sense to me. They don't, like, they'll say, I only get handmade XYZ because that's my value set. I want to support people. It's like, no, you don't want to support people. You want to make yourself feel better and important and kind of prop yourself up by saying that you only support small business owners who make things, right? And I think anybody who sells high-end art knows this, that it's a commodity. It's a commodity mentality with these people, certain people, who collect things because it's collectible. It's that kind of thing. You really need to sit down and think this out for yourself. I've thought about this, and I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but the important thing to remember is that people don't think of handmade as something that they necessarily need or want. They're really thinking about the uniqueness the excuse me, the one of a kind of qualities to it, but they're not buying it because it's handmade. If you have two pillowcases, right, and they're made from the same fabric, one is at Target and one is handmade by a seamstress, people don't care where it comes from. They're looking at the pillowcase. Okay. So, how do we respond to this? I think the most important thing is to understand this, because for example, when I do keyword research, and this goes to the customer's intent, the customer is the person with the credit card. What are they trying to accomplish when they buy something, any product? They need to fulfill a need. They would need to, it's basically fulfilling a need. It's a what's in it for me kind of thing, right? What's in it for me? When I do Pinterest keyword research, I tell people in my Pinterest class to stay away from the word handmade a lot of the time, because on Pinterest, when people search for handmade, and on Google, they're looking for things that they can make themselves. They're looking for projects to do with their kids. They're looking for things that their kids can make for themselves to give as gifts to other people. Handmade, in the context of most people's minds, means something that you make yourself with love. Okay, and please stop putting "you made it with love" on your stuff. Just don't, okay, because that's diminishing. What I really need people to understand this, because I want to support your businesses and help you make money, okay? I need people to understand that when you diminish your own business in whatever way it is, then you're hampering your own ability to make a living. The ways that you diminish your business are not understanding customer intent, okay? Using the word handmade, which it's not bad to search for handmade on Etsy, because people know that people make their own products on Etsy. You need to think about where you're putting these words, though. Words matter, okay? Language matters, and people know that, and so they use it to manipulate everybody. But there are differences in the way that people perceive the word handmade and something like handcrafted. See the difference? There's handmade, there's handcrafted. Handmade, okay. Handcrafted, ooh, that's a difference, okay? And you need to understand that if you're marketing your own products, which all of us are, or we should be if you're listening to this, because this is who this podcast is for. When you're pricing your items, this is one of my pet peeves. Don't use the pricing that the mass market manufacturers use, which is stuff that ends in 95 cents, 99 cents, 97 cents, whatever it is. Don't use that. Whole dollar amounts denote quality. And anything that you do as a handmade seller that diminishes the perception of that quality is going to hurt you in the long run. Okay? I know people who have very high-end jewelry, for example. They're making their own jewelry, they're designing it, they have very high-quality materials, and their shops look like the flea market. You cannot sell things for a higher price or use quality as a selling proposition if your shop looks like the flea market. In order to get a higher price, you need to sell the quality. And that means you have to have everything in place. Your branding has to be right. Your graphics have to be right. Your font has to be right. Do not use Comic Sans if you want to sell high-end jewelry, please, for the love of God, okay? Because every piece matters. And you need to think about this in the context of how people who don't make things are looking at it. Now let's get back to what Josh said, that there's not a market for handmade. I don't think there's a market for handmade. Like, people don't get up and say, I want to buy something handmade. That's not the first thing. Like I said, they're looking for something unique or whatever. After that, they might say, and I would like to get something that's handcrafted. I would like to get something that's made by an artisan, an artist. They're not thinking, I want to buy something that's made by my kid, or a kid that I don't know, or whatever it is. I need some caffeine right now. And yeah, I'm very low energy because I literally do not have any caffeine in my system yet. That's probably the first bit. I thought I would do this pre-caffeinated because it's a little painful. It's a little painful to admit. But the important thing is to understand that there is a perceptual difference in customers about the word handmade and handcrafted. And I'm just using those two words as an example. And that when Josh says there's not a market for handmade, he's right. And that's because he's thinking of it in a marketing capacity. He's thinking of it from a marketing perspective, and he needs to understand how to market Etsy as a platform in general. And that's why they're going after the special. They're going after unique. They're going after quality. They're really focusing on quality as a term right now. And you know what that means is flexible. That's somebody's definition. But that's what he knows that people want when they're thinking something that's made by a human being. Okay. When I worked at a department store, I think one of the men's sweater section was one of the things that we did. It was like one of the departments in my purview. And one of the rules for labeling sweaters was that you couldn't say hand knit for certain things. So there was machine knit. Those are completely made by a machine, knit by a machine, stitched by a machine, cut by a machine, whatever. Then there was made by hand, or I think it was knit by hand. No, wait, hand knit. Okay, so it was machine knit, hand knit, and knit by hand. It was those three. And you would think that hand knit would be pretty good. But what that means is that a human actually had part of the process of putting it together, but it was probably knit with a machine. Okay? It doesn't mean that they're actually making the whole thing. It means that a human was working the machine as opposed to just being an automated process that was set up in a factory somewhere. Knit by hand meant that someone actually sat down with a pair of knitting needles and made it. Okay? So there were different levels, but it's the language. Language matters. Words matter. And the language that you use matters. Okay? And I've told people in my eShop Success program, which is not open for enrollment, so please don't, ask to join, that there's a whole section in there about language and copywriting and marketing and presenting yourself a certain way because of this perception that people have that handmade is not as good. Okay, so on one hand, people are like, oh, it's handmade, which in some cases they use that to justify, oh, it's more expensive. That's okay. But then really in the back of their minds, they're like, oh, it's just a sweater. Okay. So your job as marketing your own products is to elevate your products perceptual, like the perception of your products. You have to elevate the quality perception, like I said, by putting your branding in place the right way, by pricing your things the right way. Don't use the 95 cents. That looks like a big box store. Okay, use whole dollar amounts. And if you want to argue with me on this, show me any studies. And I'm not saying the internet articles that go around that don't summarize things correct. Show me the actual studies that say that 95 cent works better, because it doesn't. It just makes people think that it's a mass market product. You can put handmade on it. It doesn't matter. You just devalued your own product. And I'm not saying devalue as in cost. I'm devalue as in perception. It's all about perception. Okay. If I had a drugstore watch, I got it for $10. Okay. I threw it on a table at a yard sale. And I've talked about this before. I threw it on a table at a yard sale. It's in with a bunch of other watches. You would think that's about how much it was worth. If I took it and put it on a pedestal with a glass cover and shone a light on it, and it's in a stand in the middle there all by itself, suddenly that is perceptually more exclusive and interesting and valuable. And people will pay more for that. Presentation matters, words matter, and if you want to make people value the quality of your products, you need to stop getting mad when people say there's not a market for handmade, and understand that that is correct. There is a market for handcrafted. There's a market for artisan. There's a market for artist's work, okay? And a lot of people get mad. I'm not a huge fan of Andy Warhol, just his artwork, right? Because there's so much that goes into that. But he was a master of marketing. He was so good at marketing. And there are other artists, I will say artists, who I'm not a big fan of, but their marketing ability is amazing. And in order to not be a starving artist, you need to master the marketing part of it. And it's not helped when you refuse to stop and look at the sentence, there's not a market for handmade, and really evaluate what that means. It doesn't mean that people don't want to buy things that are made by hand. But when you label something handmade and expect it to sell for more just because of that, it doesn't work. Okay, I think there is a market for craftsmanship. There is a market for artists. There's a market for artisans. There's a market for handcrafted. But as soon as you use the word handmade, it's not the primary thing that people think of, and it does kind of devalue your products a lot of the time unless everything else that goes with that for the marketing part of it is in place. That's all. Okay, leave me any comments if you have questions, if you have your own thoughts about this. This is kind of a big topic because it does affect how we present our stuff to the world. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I'm going to go have some more caffeine so that I'll wake up. And I will talk to you all later.